Hello everybody, this is DH Thorne here. Today's video is going to be a viewer request topic from someone named Frank who sent me an email, and I thought the question was interesting enough that I'd respond to it. He says, as a musician, I'm interested in the fusion of the creative arts with magic. I'd like to hear your own thoughts on how the two can complement each other. For me, music and magic converge in the creation of certain mind states. That state of flow when improvising and trying out new ideas, and that exhilaration of creating something that moves me. But in terms of using it to delve deeper into the black arts, perhaps you could riff on this idea for a little while. For example, creating bonds with spirits. I'm particularly interested in communicating or communing with Lucifer, or with the Lucifer energy archetype, given their energy and expression in this world, using audio signals, etc. Audio signals are actually something I've briefly experimented with in the past. That's basically taking a sigil you've drawn in Photoshop or Paint, I like to hand draw and scan, and running it through a piece of software that converts images to sound. You then use that sound as part of your ritual or meditation. Anyway, if this topic interests you, I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun and wisdom to share on the matter. Have a great weekend, Frank. All right. So you brought up a lot of interesting points there, and I agree with you on a lot of them, and it makes for an interesting thing. Now, I've been told I have good taste in music, but I've also really found that I am not someone who finds music to be something I always have to listen to, or that I feel somehow moves me in a certain way. But I want to really touch on that, because I think one of the reasons why so many people find music so moving is because it elicits kind of a natural version of what would be called the mindful state in Zen. We have a tendency when we listen to music to sort of allow our minds to become fully invested in that sound, and we focus so much of our attention on it. It's almost like driving. Like when you're driving down the road, if you've been driving for more than a couple of weeks or something, if you know how to drive well, it becomes such a second nature activity that it doesn't require any real thought. And somehow while driving, some part of your brain that is usually distracted by the inner monologue of nonsense kind of lets go, and your thoughts still flow, but they flow more naturally. And you have a tendency to I don't know, some people really find it relaxing to drive, right? And in much the same way, listening to music does this. It sort of triggers a state not unlike the mindfulness state in Zen, when someone is experiencing that state where they are fully and completely invested, not in their thoughts or in their imagination or their worries and doubts or their any of those things, but they're fully invested in the moment. That is a mindfulness state. You're fully invested in what you're experiencing right now without a lot of things getting in the way of that experience. That is mindfulness, more or less. And listening to good music, so whatever kind of music does that for you, is an easy and natural way for just about anybody to enter something like the mindfulness state. It is not exactly the same by any stretch, but it is much closer to that than, say, doing your taxes, right? So when we are using music as a way to entertain ourselves, this is a natural part of what happens. It does create at least a little bit of an altered state of consciousness at the very least. Now, music, sound, music, all of these things are intrinsically important to a lot of people's magical careers, paths, experiments, whatever you want to call it. Because there is, of course, this belief that everything is vibration, and that vibration and energy and music, they're all kind of the same thing. There's people who, I think, they glorify and deify music a little too much. They put a little too much into how important music is. You have to understand that music to a human is going to be a noise to some other creature. So music isn't necessarily universal completely. But one thing I will point out that's 100% true is that most cultures understand certain sounds in the same way. If you go to somebody in a completely alien human culture, say you go somewhere to tribal Africa and you go to someone here and you play sad music, with or without vocals, just sad melodies, very similar emotional and mental states can be evoked because of that. In other words, it's not that you have to learn the language of music before you understand it necessarily. That's not to say that there's no learning going on. It's just that there's something instinctive ingrained into humanity, almost like Jungian archetypes or something like that, that are just a natural part of our consciousness that communicates universally to most human beings. But what about this idea that vibration is everything and so on? Now, that is not, I'm going to say that teeters it teeters between pseudoscience and rational thinking. It teeters between superstitious mumbo jumbo and reality. There's a lot there to unpack, and I don't really have the energy to do so today. But I will say that the idea of vibration being a fundamental thing in magic and in the world and in how the universe manifests is not incorrect, at least in terms of how we experience it. For those of us who are living in the world of Maya, the world of illusion, that is, it doesn't mean that the real world isn't real. I don't want to have to go through an entire thing explaining this to you, but it doesn't mean that the whole world isn't real. That's not what Maya means. It doesn't mean that what you experience is like you don't have to care about it. What it means is that it's illusory, like a hologram. It is an overlay, which kind of makes it hard for the average person to see through that delusional hologram and see the true nature of reality below, which is consciousness, more or less, or some variation thereof. So you have consciousness as the fundamental building block of reality. That is what everything is a form of consciousness. Consciousness experiencing itself, we'll say. Awareness experiencing itself triggers consciousness, causes consciousness. Consciousness is this constant ebb and flow of interreaction, and that could manifest in a vibratory way, especially in the illusion of Maya, no question. So one analogy would be this. Imagine that awareness or consciousness is like an ocean, and we've had this talk before. It's like an ocean, and the waves are the vibrations upon the surface of that ocean, and those waves, those vibrations are what awareness is observing in itself. It's observing within itself this expansion, contraction, fluctuation, vibration within itself, and that manifests more or less the reality that we see, or at least what we see looks like that. That is what manifests it. And it's not unfair. It can lean into pseudoscience, which is why I don't use this explanation. To me, it's not an ontological truth. However, it would be completely undeniable for me it would be ridiculous for me to say that vibration isn't a part of everything in our living experience. Everything you experience vibrates a certain way because everything has a temperature, and by that nature alone, it's vibrating. Just by that alone, it's vibrating. Now, Tesla had a very interesting perspective on this. He actually, I believe he invented the machine, and I'm not sure if it's completely confirmed or just in some principles it is. He stated that he could create a machine which would, upon figuring out the proper harmonic of any object, he could cause it to disintegrate. He could cause it to break apart by creating just a little bit of energy. It doesn't even take much, but you find the right harmonic and you oscillate it just right. You can shake apart anything. And this is true. Actually, there was this, more or less. There was this thing I used to do. I went to, whenever I'd be waiting for the bus, there was this one little pole that I'd kind of lean against. And it was like one of those little bus stop poles. And I would sort of push on it. And it was kind of fun to push on it and push as little as possible, just a little bit of pressure. And just time it just right so that each push would just add a little bit more energy to that push until I get the whole thing wiggling just by going like this, just a little bit. And it's not an impossible theory. This is how you break a glass. When you have a singer who goes, ooh, and they break a glass, that's what they're doing, is essentially the harmonic is just right and it breaks apart the crystal. It's not capable of handling that much vibration. So this idea of vibration and sonic energy is not unreal. It is absolutely real. It is absolutely a big part of our reality. And so, of course, there is kind of this as above, so below quality with the nature of sound and music and working with magic. I would be a liar if I didn't tell you, or if I denied the fact that I will do various sonic things in ritual, just naturally speaking. I will chant, I will speak, I will sometimes hum. And I will even tell you that one of my favorite things is just that Hindu om sound. Now it's not really om; it's actually aum. It's actually meant to be aum, and this is thought to be the vibratory language of the universe, the syllable of the universe. It is the hum which all of Maya vibrates with. It is the true sound in Hindu. In Sanskrit. And it's a very powerful sound. In fact, it's a very interesting sound when you think about it, because I think I heard this Sadhguru had said this, and he's mostly right, that when you think about making sounds with your mouth, what sounds can you make without your tongue? There's not many, right? You have ah, oo, you go e, but even that requires a little bit of inflection of the tongue. I have to move your tongue. I, so aum, om, so ah, oo, e, om, not too many syllables work in there. You go op, that's one you don't need your tongue for. But aum is like the most natural sound that you can make without a tongue. Or op or something like that. But it's the most, just try it with me. Just go, and there's something about that sound when intoned for a while. Now, intoning is a little different than singing. Intoning means there's an internal component to it. You are, when you make the sound, you are hearing it in your astral ears as well, and you're feeling the vibration of it. Just going like saying it like a word, or singing it that's great. But really, and feel that vibration, feel the whole thing flow through you. That is intonation 101, is learning how to make these vowel consonant, sounds that sound miraculous like this. This sets up a vibratory pattern. Now, I will say, and it's been coming up a lot lately, so it's probably synchronistic. It's coming up a lot lately in conversation about how cats, when they purr, they don't just purr when they feel good and are happy. They'll purr when they're upset and in pain too. And scientists have discovered that purring actually induces or encourages healing. In other words, they heal better when they purr. Something about the vibration causes them to heal better, maybe boost their immunity or boost their regenerative processes or something. And it's documented, I don't know if it's been proven scientifically, it's certainly been documented, that people, especially with emotional issues, who use aum as a mantra and just center on that and just go properly for the right amount of time every day for a month, have significant changes in their life and their emotional state and all this other stuff. So there's something to sound. There's something absolutely integrally important to sound. Now, the one issue is that we have to remember that sound, what we call sound, is an illusion, okay? There's that old koan, or the old question, if a tree falls in the forest with no one to hear it, does it make a sound? Now, that's always an interesting question from just a left brain perspective, a analytical brain perspective. We have to ask the question, what is sound? What is sound? Sound is, people say sound is vibration, but that's not true. Sound is not vibration. Vibration is what we interpret as sound. Sound is a human experience. Only humans and other animals, they hear it supposedly, probably, but only you know what sound means, really. I can tell you what sound means for me. It's like colors. I can look out in the world and I can see colors, but when I describe those colors, I can't actually describe the color in a way that describes what it actually looks like. All I can do is compare it to things that we have in common with each other and agree that that's what we both call blue, but that doesn't mean that we both see blue as the same color. If I look in the sky and say the sky is blue, you're going to go, yeah, I see that too. That must be the color blue. Great, but that doesn't mean that we both see the same thing when we see blue. By the same token, when we hear something, the sound we hear isn't necessarily the same. In fact, this is easier to prove because some people are literally tone deaf. And when they sing inside their head, it sounds wonderful, but to the rest of the world, it sounds terrible. There's actually a reason for that. It has something to do with your inner ear most of the time. So sound is your relationship to vibration, is really what sound is. Sound is the relationship of awareness to the vibration. And it's not even that fair because that vibration is being processed by all these electrical chemical signals going on in your brain matter. So you're not even having a relationship to the vibration. You're having a relationship to your brain experiencing that vibration. Go figure that one out. So there's all these different layers of separation, if you will. So sound is not what you think it is. Sound is actually something interpretive by your own consciousness. That is what sound is. So when we're talking about sound and music and air and vibrations and all this kind of good stuff, being pedantic helps. It helps to understand what we're talking about. What is it then that makes music so special? It clearly isn't just the vibration. It clearly isn't just the any of that. It's something internal with us that makes it wonderful. Something about sound being that reflection, that relationship that our consciousness has to vibration and electrical signals in the brain. That is what makes music moving to us and makes it have an impact on us. So I would argue that what is being worked upon is not the world at large per se. When I say I can't change the world with a musical note. I can't like play music and like have nobody there to hear it and change the world per se. Well, maybe I can. Maybe that'd be a fun experiment. But having people hear that can change the collective conscious. It can change the collective conscious to the point where real things can manifest. As we've discussed before, you know, the way magic is, the way magic works, if the non-dual nature of reality is true, and I am fully aware of my non-dual nature, if the non-dual nature of reality is true, it is an ontological fact, then that means that magic really isn't really a system of cause and effect. It is more like a language we speak to our, we call higher self, the Brahman, through the Atman, through our soul. We speak this language to our greater self, and in the hopes that that self responds. And of course, there is no cause and effect, so we have to see this more as a celebration, as a thing that we do that, you know, correlation does not equal causation is the famous line in science. Whenever there's something goofy going on, they say correlation doesn't equal causation. That when you are doing magic, this is more of an attempt to have a relationship to that consciousness. And when you get those moments of magical manifestation, it's fireworks, it's amazing, and you suddenly have a moment where you question reality, and that is your chance. That is your moment where you get to go, what is reality then? If I can light a candle and make something happen, if I can go aum and something changes. There's no direct relationship between what I did in the ritual and the thing that happened later. So there is no cause and effect. There is literally no cause and effect. There is only a manifestation, and a synchronistic at that. So what does this mean? It's a way of communicating. It's a way of bridging the gap between the divine that we are and the divine we don't realize we are. It's a way to bridge that gap. So music or sound is this bridge, this as above, so below bridge between the firmament, the as below world, and that as above world of astral. It's a way to have an experience of them merged together as one experience. It's a very powerful thing. So music, of course, what sounds like music to us is not music to the universe necessarily. Of course it is if we are the universe. But what I mean is there's a lot of other creatures that wouldn't think that's music. I'll give you my bird, for example. My bird loves like old style West Coast gangster rap music. Most of the birds I've ever owned love it. They love the between the rhythm and the tendency for like scratching records and all that kind of stuff. It just makes him bop and chirp and everything else. But if I were to play Mozart for him, he doesn't really respond to it. Just kind of tunes it out. It just sounds like the world to him. And my dog, if I play certain music, will completely ignore it. Completely. But if I run the vacuum, whoo, what's that? So what triggers this response in us is not a universal thing. It's not something that just works on everything. It works especially with human beings, especially, and a few other creatures that are we'll say responsive to it. Okay. Listen to a humpback whale singing, right? That's music to a humpback whale. It's absolutely music to them. And it's a language. And it works for them. And it's magical for them. And that's important to note, is that there is a difference. There are insects which play serenades for each other. You know, there's insects that drum on things and that rub their legs together. And I think spiders will even do things with their webs, if I remember correctly. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. In fact, imagine being a spider. It doesn't really have ears, but it can sense vibration. And it's clinging to its web. Imagine what that feels and sounds like to whatever their sense is while air molecules are flowing around it. I think someone had done a thing that sounds like music. It sounds like beautiful music. Very, very, you know, because it sounds like a string instrument. So there's so much here with vibration and experience that's really important. Now, when it comes to working with spirits and doing that kind of stuff, abso-fucking-lutely, it is pretty much probably the oldest form of offering to the spirit world is singing. That and giving it food and offerings of that nature. Like it's right there. It's like at the dawn of time, you know, people began by talking to the spirits and giving them libations and food and crap and singing to them. Like that's it, and dancing for them. Like that, you don't get much more primitive than that. And maybe you can, but that's where, you know, if we're talking Stone Age man, I'm picturing a bunch of naked people banging on some bongos and singing to a spirit. That's it. So the spirit world is absolutely, utterly enraptured by these offerings. If you sing to a spirit, that is absolutely, or play music for it even, but especially you doing it. Now, the reason why, there's an important thing to understand here. Spiritual beings are not separate from you, and you're not separate from them. They are part of you, and you're part of them. They are part of the collective consciousness. They are one part the skeptical argument of they're just imaginatory, and they're one part real in the magical sense, not in the theistic sense. There is no God that created the world. There is no personal God that will save you from hell. There is none of that. It doesn't make the sky thunder. However, interesting synchronicities do happen, right? Like I say all the time, miracles do happen. Of course, they're often explainable. But anyway, so these spiritual beings, if you just play music for them in the environment, they need a way to experience that music through us. They are human, parts of the human collective consciousness. And some of those are parts of more of a cosmic consciousness, if you will, that's not limited necessarily to humanity. It's more of a fundamental archetype of reality. So it's more basic than that. So maybe it's a little bit more universal. But when we play music, we are playing sounds that move us. Okay, and that is the offering, because they integrate, they invoke. When we invoke them, if you watch my video, and I'll probably redo this video on offerings and pack making and all that kind of good stuff, one of the things I tell you is that the most pinnacle, top-notch, greatest way to give an offering to any spirit, preferably one you trust, invoke them, like even going so far as possession, invoke them, and then partake in the offering as if it's for them through you. This way they have an embodied feeling. This way they are fully in your senses. They are fully able to pick up on your senses. That energy, that vibration, whatever you want to call it, that emotional state, they are able to tune into that. And that's something that, being non-local disembodied beings, they are less, their sensation of these things, being part of the collective consciousness, is far less profound than it is for us. We're right here. We're zoomed in on this body. And so when we taste, touch, and feel things, it's really vivid and visceral for us. This is why physical pleasure is such a big deal to us. Spiritual beings, however, don't have this capacity the same way we do. If they have it, it's much more spread out and non-local. So giving them a body in which to participate in the experience, they love that. They will, providing everything else is in order, you and a spirit will go far if you invoke them and share an offering with them. So playing music is excellent, because if you're sitting there and listening to the music and giving that feeling and experience to them, that's great. You can actually add yet another coin on top of the stack of an offering by now you be the thing singing it. You're adding more to the experience. Everybody knows, everybody who's listening to this video knows that when you sing or play or dance or move along to music, if you participate in the music somehow, it is always that much better. Always. I don't think there's anybody on this planet that if I gave them a wide enough palette of ways to interact with that music, humming, singing, tapping their foot, dancing, whatever, it always makes it better. It just does. So in much the same way, when you're participating in it, you're making it that much stronger of a connection for them. So absolutely. Now, giving a song to honor a spirit or playing music that you think resonates with them, very effective, very effective. There's, and of course, things that you make yourself. I often think of spirits jokingly, almost like a parent when a kid hands them a really bad drawing when they're really young. Like everybody's refrigerator at one point in their life had that picture of the house with the, the crayon picture that's just like stick figures of crap. Everybody's seen that. Everybody knows what we're talking about. And to the gods, that is more beautiful than a photograph, because you did it. You did it yourself. You created it for them, your time and energy, and it came out of your psyche, your Atman, your specific focus. It was within your purview, and you brought it out of your own experience and put it there for them. So it's even more powerful and potent for them to experience it. So very important. Now there's also things like binaural beats and various frequencies like 435, I think it's supposed to be, instead of 440. I forget what it is. I'll have to look it up. 432, I think that's what it is. 432 is the original frequency of music, and that's also the frequency that many people are supposed to intone Om in, and all of this stuff. This is a very interesting thing, how these things affect our brains. Now, I did a video not too long ago evaluating gateway process. I highly encourage you guys to watch that video. It's all about binaural effects, which gateway process uses to a great degree. They use the binaural effects, and it's quite potent in some ways. It's binaural effects of a certain type, actually multiple binaural effects going on at once, with also hypnotic suggestion and visualization and stuff like that. Very, very potentially potent. Now, the binaural beats, by themselves, they're not magical. They're just something that, if it really works, and there is research to suggest it does, and there's research that suggests it's pseudoscience, but let's assume it does work for a moment. I know that when I listen to it, it doesn't force me into the state that it describes, but I will say that I find it easier to enter the state that they describe. Almost, it could be a placebo. It doesn't really matter. If it helps, placebo or not. So when I'm listening to binaural beats, I can enter certain states of consciousness a little bit easier than if I don't have them. When I say that, I mean, obviously meditative states are different, but let's say I'm trying to write and I'm not feeling very creative. Well, I'll tune into the right frequency, sort of like an alpha frequency, or maybe a little bit of a high theta and a low alpha, something like that. And I'll sort of enter that kind of daydreamy state, and then I'll start writing from there. And that helps a lot. It's not necessary, but it gives you that little bit of an edge into doing it better. So yes, you absolutely can use sound. You can dedicate it to spirits. You can find creative ways to make those sounds. I think it was Michael Ford, actually, if I remember correctly. He actually used the sounds of the planets. The sounds that are caused by Jupiter's ionosphere, its electromagnetic field, that were captured by Voyager or something, and use those because they're pretty spooky sounds. If you look up what does Jupiter sound like, if you look that up, it's pretty creepy what it sounds like. It's radio transmissions, of course, being turned into sound. Of course, they have to bring it down a bunch so you can hear it, but it's a trippy sound. It sounds like spooky space stuff. And I believe Michael Ford put it to music, or made music. And if it wasn't Michael Ford, then hopefully whoever it was forgives me, but that's who I feel like it was. And very potent stuff, very potent stuff. But of course, it depends on who and what is listening. So keep that in mind. So anyway, guys, I can't really think of much else to say on this topic. There's probably more that could be said. But it's a very potent thing to add to your repertoire in doing magic. Try it out, especially Om. Try that out. It's one of the most powerful mantras there is. Confirmed, I can confirm. It works in all situations. And of course, there's others. You have Lam, you have all these other ones. They're very potent and powerful. Just because I don't use them on my videos as the mantra to use they are very powerful mantras nonetheless. So check that stuff out. Think about using them, especially the mantras. Sing them to them, you know, sing Enochian to your spirits, especially if they're spirits that jive like angels. Sing it to the angels. They'll love you. They'll love that. I don't know from firsthand, but I've heard many people say this. So anyway, guys, that's it for now. This is D.H. Thorne signing off. Hope to see you next week. And until next time, mind the shadows. Check out the link in the description if you want to support me. There's ways you can do that by purchasing my books, going to Patreon. Of course, you can enroll in my weekly class, which is doing quite well. The class, we changed the hours from afternoon. It is now in the evening from 9 p.m. till 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern time. So if you couldn't attend before, now you can. If that gives you a little bit extra cherry on top to show up or participate, go for it. But if you can't make it, all of those classes are recorded and shared later to those patrons who are that tier. So check out my Patreon for that service. It's one of my favorite ones. It's doing really well. And check it out. Anyway, guys, until next time, mind the shadows.